Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, a goodly morning to you.
And a goodly morning to you too, Andrew. How are you today?
I'm all right. You know, I actually sort of enjoyed yesterday for the kind of no stress, what's the word I'm looking for? Game of football. There was another word I was going to use which would make me sound smarter, but now I sound like an actual idiot because I can't remember that word.
Yeah, I mean, without all the stakes of the league, I guess.
Exactly.
Although I don't know if I felt like that 3 minutes in.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. It was a bit of a chaotic start to the game, but generally speaking, I was able to sort of just relax. A bit of que sera in terms of what happened on the pitch. Obviously, I wanted us to win the game, and I thought we would win the game, and obviously we did do that. But it was nice just to sort of ease into an afternoon and not be sort of stressing and worrying and have this sort of anxiety about every single thing that encapsulates our Premier League games this season. So I enjoyed it from that perspective. I'm going to do something unusual and start with a question because you were there yesterday, you were working, and on the Discord, Snooner Gunner asked, 6 years ago when we played Portsmouth in the FA Cup, James endured a cramped seat in the press box, pillars obstructing his view, cold KFC in his bag stinking out his items, and an Ibis hotel. So my question is, has anything changed since that last visit? And fucking fair play to that guy for remembering all that detail of a game that happened 6 years ago. I was like, we played Portsmouth in the FA Cup 6 years ago?
Oh yeah, Mikel Arteta was manager, I believe. Eddie Nketiah scored.
Still don't remember.
Yeah, early 2020, I think we won 2-0. I mean, I had forgotten the detail of KFC in my bag.
Is it still there?
I'm delighted to inform you that no KFC in the bag on this occasion, but the smell haunts me still. That's what that aroma is. Every time I open my rucksack, I'm like, what is that? Of course, it's the Colonel's secret recipe. No, it's very cramped. I don't know what... These sort of old Victorian press boxes are made for a smaller breed of human than I. And I was sat next to Dean Ashton. If you remember Dean Ashton, the former West
Ham player, yeah.
He's a big lad as well.
He is, yeah.
And I mean, he's still in good nick, but I dare say he's slightly bigger than he was when he was playing. So the two of us in next to each other, it was a squeeze. Survived. Sort of like being on a Ryanair flight. You sort of battle for legroom, what little legroom there is. You're sort of having to battle with the person beside you. It's actually sort of quite sweet, touching, almost romantic, because it's so tight that you can't help but every so often your thigh brushes against Dean Ashton's, and there's sort of a moment of like, oh, sorry, but was it deliberate? Is it part of some 90-minute flirtation that's playing out between the two of you?
But what can we do? Lucky for you, it wasn't Chris Sutton. That's all I will say.
That's true. And like with these little press boxes, it's like such a tin of sardines that once you're in, you're in. So, you know, you can't be getting out because you want to, I don't know, stretch your legs or go
to
for
the bathroom,
or whatever.
yeah.
From about an hour before kickoff until a little while after full time, you're there, nuzzled against Dean Ashton in the freezing cold, like Arsene Wenger clinging to Pat Rice at West Brom all those years ago. But listen, I enjoyed it as well. I know what you mean. It's kind of a palate cleanser. It's like it's devoid of so much of the weight of stakes and narrative that we have to endure week in, week out in the Premier League. And also, like, it's a different ground. It's a different team. I just feel like there's not the baggage around these fixtures that there is around some of the league games. Yeah. And it's a nice opportunity to see players we don't necessarily see starting week in, week out.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess one of the unintended consequences of this game might be, after an FA Cup game, we might just not get articles about people telling Arsenal fans to relax and enjoy it. Seems to have been like so many of those over the last couple of days. And I get it. I get the intention and I understand if you're looking at things objectively, but I am a bit tired of people just, you need to relax, enjoy it, etc. etc. We'll do it the way we fucking want to do it, you know? Because like, as I said to somebody the other day, there is the weight, as in the heaviness of 20 plus years without winning a title. And then there is the weight of over 20 years for a title. So the weight is considerable for Arsenal fans. But that's why I enjoyed yesterday. It's why I enjoyed the team selection. It's why I enjoyed the game and even the madness of conceding a little bit early. So there were 10 changes from the team that played Liverpool. Gabriel was the only player in the starting lineup who started against Liverpool. The absence of William Saliba meant Christian Norgard was starting at centre half alongside Gabriel. Midfield trio of Eze, Waneri and Mikel Merino. Gabriel Jesus gets a start up front. Ben White is in. Myles Lewis-Skelly is in. Kepa is in goal. And Mikel Arteta said we started exactly how we didn't want to start. Look, I think the first 10 minutes or so were kind of nuts from an Arsenal perspective. But you got to give Portsmouth rather some credit for the way that they played this game, because the expectation was, right, they're just going to come, they're going to sit, they're going to, sit in a deep block. And actually, they said, fuck it, we'll have a go. We'll press high. We'll try and cause Arsenal some problems. And they did that.
Yeah, they did. And I think they've played a 5 at the back at times this season, but they started with a 4 here and pressed really high, worked incredibly hard. And yeah, unsettled Arsenal, I think it's fair to say, in those first few minutes. And they got their reward too. Obviously, there was a brilliant atmosphere. There often is at Fratton Park, and for the visit of the team who are top of the Premier League and the Champions League, you know they're going to be up for it. And yeah, they got themselves in front. And I thought, we had a hell of a shock involving a Premier League team on Saturday with Crystal Palace going out. And I thought, they were separated by 6 tiers, right, of English football. I think it's the biggest. Is it Macclesfield?
Yes.
Technically the biggest shock in FA Cup history. But I was sort of thinking about it, and although Portsmouth are just one division below, given where Arsenal are at and how well Arsenal have been playing and the expectations that are on them this season, this would have been quite extraordinary in itself. So
yeah.
There was a few nervous gulps from me about 3 minutes in, but the good news was there was a long, long way to go.
Yeah, the first few minutes were really strange. It was almost like Christian Norgard forgot he was playing at centre half a couple of times.
Yeah.
Honestly, he was in midfield positions where I was going, that's not right. That right. Can't be right. That's not the instruction, and that's not where you stand if you're a central defender. And listen, he's not a central defender. He's a central midfielder. So I get it. But it was really weird to see that sort of lack of shape, because normally Arsenal are very well organised, very well disciplined in terms of their positioning. And I was quite baffled, really, by some of it in that opening 5 or 10 minutes. And obviously we conceded the goal. There was a shot which Kepa, I think, probably should do a little bit better with. He should push it a bit further away. It fell for, is it Colby Bishop?
I believe so.
Sounds like a star of Dynasty or something.
Yeah. It's a real Football Manager regen name, that. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kepa, he almost, I've not seen a great angle of it, but it almost looks like he dives beyond it, and then his hands sort of push it back in when really he wants to be pushing it wide. But yeah, good, decent reactions from the striker, and there you go. Pompey have their big moment. There was
a great bit on the TV. I don't know if you had TV footage for replays in the press box or anything like that, but there was a moment just before we took the corner from which we equalised. They showed a replay of the goal because apparently there was an incident in the crowd, and they stopped the game, paused the game for a couple of minutes just to get on top of that particular thing. So they showed the replay of the goal. They showed the replay of the Portsmouth fans celebrating, and then they showed a replay of Mikel Arteta's reaction to the goal. And there's one of the coaches just sort of
Sam.
What's his name? Sam, the guy with the ginger beard.
Sam Wilson.
There you go. So Sam Wilson sort of looks at Mikel Arteta, who turns his head and closes his eyes. And at that moment, I know these are very, very well-paid professionals who have a job to do, and they didn't do their job well enough in that moment. There was a part of me that kind of felt, oh, I feel a bit sorry for these guys because they're going to get it at halftime. Like, they are absolutely going to get an earful. And I think, in that opening 10, 15 minutes or so, I grew more afraid for the guys on the pitch because of what they were doing wrong. There was a real casualness to Arsenal in possession. We kept giving the ball away. Noni Madueke in the first 10, 15 minutes must have lost 2 or 3 duels, which, again, we know what Mikel Arteta is like. There's some previous in an FA Cup game where a player didn't quite commit properly to the duels and found himself hauled off away from home at this stage of the competition, which went through my mind a bit with Madueke in the first 10, 15 minutes, because there were moments where I was like, well, what's going on here? And I'm guessing, despite the fact that we equalised from that corner, there would have been a lot of frustration from Mikel Arteta about the way that his team were playing.
Yeah, definitely. I have seen that clip, and it is Sam Wilson has the fear of God in his eyes.
He's like, uh-oh.
Looks at Mikel Arteta, and Arteta's just sort of turning away, looking disappointed and potentially furious. It was an iffy start. I think Arsenal did look rattled. It's probably too strong, but set off kilter, maybe. And you've got to remember, it is 10 changes, right? Mm-hmm. So, maybe there is a period of adjustment. It's 10 changes. It's people like Christian Norgard playing an unfamiliar position at the back. Mm-hmm. Someone like Merino even playing an unfamiliar position as a number 6. And those connections, those relationships, maybe not quite there. So I think it's understandable. But, yeah, I was a bit worried. And Madueke, who had a kind of fascinating game, I think, really. I mean, if you were asking someone what sort of player is Noni Madueke, you could just give them the tape of this match, and I think it would tell that story quite eloquently. But yeah, he had a couple of bad moments early on where I did see someone posit on Blue Sky, oh dear, are we going to see a Nuno Tavares situation?
I mean, he
Absolutely
had...
not.
Yeah, we might come back to him, obviously, because he was very involved in a lot of stuff in this game, for better and worse. The nice thing you might say about his game, it was very busy, but there were obviously things he could have done better in certain moments. But at the same time, he ended up the game with 2 assists, 2 excellent corner deliveries, which we'll come to in due course. But that goal, I think, as well, that sort of quick equaliser probably was really important in terms of, just reacting to that early shock, if you want to call it that. And I think what we saw in after about 15 minutes was Arsenal coming to terms with the Portsmouth press and being able to play through it. And we didn't necessarily progress the ball as well as we could have once we'd broken through that press, but we came to terms with the press. Midfield wasn't quite clicking the way you would like. Although I do think, in that first half, when things weren't great, we got a really mature kind of senior professional performance from Mikel Merino, who I think helped sort of glue everything together. And after about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you could see that Arsenal were well and truly on top. I know we were probably ahead at that point. About 25 minutes, we went ahead. And after that, everything started to feel a bit more cohesive, players understanding where they needed to be. But in that difficult period, I thought Merino was... You could see the seniority, right? You could see the sort of mature technical security that he brought to the team, which I think we absolutely needed.
I thought he was very classy on the day. I really did think it was an excellent performance. Again, in a relatively unfamiliar position. I mean, he's a dream for a manager.
He's not a defensive midfielder.
Finally, Merino is DM, I know. But when we need him to be a number 9, he's number 8. But when we need him to be a number 9, he can do it. When we need him to be a number 6, he can do it. And I think the reason for that is he's a very tactically astute footballer. Mm-hmm. What do number 9 and number 6 share? I think they really share a need to kind of understand positioning relative to your teammates. And I thought he did that very well on the day. There were moments where Portsmouth went long, where he dropped in almost like a third centre-half at times. I thought he was really secure in possession. Obviously, there was a beautiful first-time through ball to Gabriel Martinelli, but there were one or two kind of trademark turns in midfield as well for Merino. And the other thing, I just thought, like, this is a guy who seems to sort of recognise this cup tie for what it is. Like, he knows we're away against a team who are going to harry us and be physical and work hard, and we have to meet that with our own levels of physicality.
Yep.
It was the kind of cup performance you expect from, and forgive the stereotyping, but sort of an English player who knows the competition inside out. I felt he really had that air. I suppose that was, partly why he was given the captain's armband on the day as well. So I thought in the first half, he was the outstanding player on the pitch. Yeah, I mean, that pass you mentioned, he plays a little sort of 1-2 with Eze before sending that ball through for Martinelli. It really is an excellent pass, and maybe Martinelli should score there. Martinelli absolutely should have scored from a Ben White pass, by the way, at the back post, where he just sort of stabbed it onto the post. But in the meantime, obviously, he had got on the score sheet. We got a corner. I think this came from a nice pass from Ethan Nwaneri, who I also thought had an interesting performance in this game. It took him a little while to get going, but I liked the way that he played. I liked that there were passes he chose to play which weren't the simple passes. There was one from, let's say, the right-hand side of midfield over to the left-hand side, which found Eze, and he had to sort of thread it with pace through a collection of midfield players, and that was not the easiest option to take. And I really enjoyed that aspect of his game, that he looked for the more difficult pass rather than play it safe. Considering he hasn't been playing a great deal of late, you can understand, or you could understand maybe a player going, right, I'll just do the simple thing and make sure I don't give the ball away. I don't want to get in the manager's eye line for giving the ball away. So I really like that about Nwaneri. But I think he played a pass to Madueke, which ended up as a corner. Madueke took the corner, and Gabriel Martinelli flicks home a header at the near post. And he's not the Gabriel that you would expect to score from a corner for Arsenal. No, he's not. But he is decent in the air. And Mikel Arteta mentioned that afterwards and spoke about his movement and his timing inside the penalty area. I mean, I always remember when Martinelli arrived here as a teenager under Unai Emery, and his first few appearances with the first team were as a centre-forward, I think in pre-season and then maybe in the League Cup. And he scored a couple of decent headers, I think, in that little stretch. And it was partly, I think, what gave people the confidence or the idea that he might develop into a central striker. But yeah, I thought this was a great delivery, great corner. Someone said to me before the game that Portsmouth don't have the best record defending set pieces. I don't think they got the best defensive record, full stop, given their place in the Championship. But I suppose if you're struggling to live with Championship teams at dead balls, Arsenal are sort of your worst nightmare.
Yeah, for sure. And that obviously played out over the course of this game. As I said, there were other chances. The Martinelli one that he put wide from the Merino pass, Martinelli hitting the post, where he really should have scored that one. And then there was a penalty. Noni Madueke fouled in the box. Former young gunner Zach Swanson was the guy, by the way, who fouled him. So
yeah, he was with us for 14 years.
There you go.
Wikipedia. So Arsenal heritage. I mean, Madueke is a fascinating one. I thought coming into the game, I really thought this is going to be a big game for him, just because I think the level of dribbling ability and ball carrying and speed and athleticism that he has, for a Championship defence and a struggling Championship defence at that, I just thought was going to be really, really tough. And it did kind of play out like that, really. I mean, I think he was very impactful. Wins the penalty here. I've got to say, I don't know if the TV pictures caught it, but he immediately picked that ball up. There was absolutely no debate, no negotiation. It was going to be him.
I guess that's something that they would have worked out, though, before they go onto the pitch, right? What's the penalty taking pecking order?
I would think so. I did notice that Eze was sort of as it was awarded, he kind of lingered by the spot a little bit. Maybe optimistically, I don't know. But when he saw that Noni had that ball and was not going to let go of it for love nor money, he backed off. I mean, it was interesting because obviously Madueke had a bit of history at Chelsea with penalties. He had a row, didn't he, I think it was with Nicholas Jackson, over a penalty that he wanted to take, which I believe Cole Palmer ended up taking. Perhaps we saw why.
I mean, listen, I applaud the confidence. I applaud the decisiveness. You know, if a player feels like they want to step up and take a penalty, great.
Yeah, especially when they've earned it. Like, you know, there is a sort of... I know Thierry Henry was kind of the mind. He used to not take a lot of the ones he earned. Superstition or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I guess as well, we spoke about stakes in this game feeling a bit different. I do wonder if it was kind of 3 Premier League points on the line, if it might have been different. But maybe I didn't see. Was Arteta asked about it after the game? He wasn't in his press conference.
I think so. No, he did not on TV either. There was no question about that. So it would be interesting to know if
he was designated.
Yeah, if he was the designated number one penalty taker on the pitch, because like you say, has taken them for Crystal Palace. Gabriel Jesus, who I know is not the most convincing penalty taker, but has certainly scored a penalty or two for Arsenal down the years, and as the number 9 might fancy his chances of taking it. But anyway, Madueke,
Merino, I think would probably take.
Yeah, Merino takes a good penalty too, and as captain, maybe he could.
Martinelli.
Yeah. Anyway,
there's a few.
There were. Anyway, he puffed out his cheeks, did a little stuttery run up, and then put the ball wide. Which I sort of felt in many ways kind of summed up his half of football, in that, you know, winning the penalty was, you know, down to his own endeavour and driving into the box. And, you know, you could argue all day whether the foul was a significant one or not. But anyway, the referees pointed to the spot. He won the penalty. He was on the ball and he was trying to make something happen. So that's good. But then that was bad. The penalty take itself was bad. And I felt like there were moments in this game where he got to sort of the edge of the box or got into a dangerous position, and then it just sort of fell apart a little bit. So it was a weird half to try and analyse for him, or even a weird game to try and analyse for him, because he got 2 assists. He delivered good balls for Gabriel Martinelli to head home, and I don't think we need to take anything away from Gabriel Martinelli either, because he had to finish those chances, and they weren't easy, particularly the second one. But Madueke gets the credit for those good deliveries. But then, you know, the penalty was bad, and some of his early work in the game was bad, and at the same time, he was sort of always there. I think it was he who got fouled in midfield, wasn't it, when we scored the 3rd goal? Myles Lewis-Skelly took a quick free kick, but it was Madueke driving through midfield who got fouled. So there's sort of like this weird effectiveness with a kind of side helping of, you know what I mean? I don't know how best to describe it.
No, I know what you mean. You know, he does so well often to get into dangerous positions, and then there's a kind of element of roulette about what you get at the end of that. And I almost am surprised that his corner-taking delivery is as good as it is, because his execution of like his ball striking and in those sort of decisive moments isn't always what you would want. But he actually takes a really good corner, and he has done. You know, whenever I think he's been in the team, he's created opportunities. Even against Liverpool on Thursday, there was a decent one to the back post, which Gabriel met. And then 2 to the near post here for Gabriel Martinelli. I guess I'll declare I really enjoy watching Madueke. I know that he can be frustrating, but I really admire the relentlessness with which he plays. And like, I feel like there is a real determination and willingness to sort of take responsibility. I guess we see that with the way that he grabs up the ball for the penalty. But I just like the way he'll go at that fullback again and again and again. And granted, I accept, once he gets beyond them, it's not always the outcome that you want. But I do feel that sort of by and large, he does it so frequently that there's usually one or two very good moments in a game, and that can be enough sometimes.
I think that's true when you consider maybe how Arsenal have been. Maybe we've lacked. We talked about individualism loads of times on this podcast, right? We talked about someone like Alexis Sanchez, and I'm not saying Madueke is like Alexis Sanchez, certainly not of the same quality, but there is that either license or willingness on his part to do things or to take chances, to dribble in areas where maybe other players might pass, you know.
He is a bit of a maverick, yeah. He's a bit of a, you know, he's kind of a joker in the pack. And I'm not saying that it works all the time, but I do think he brings that individualism and that ability to kind of break lines and dribble the ball. You know, I don't think this is a squad blessed with tons of brilliant dribblers, particularly in those sort of congested final third areas. And I think he does that. I mean, I can totally get the allure of Madueke as a coach as well, like, because you must look at those raw ingredients and think, if I could just, do you know what I mean? Like the temptation to be like, if we could just put that final piece on it, you would have an absolutely top level player. I suppose I would say at this point in time, you know, how likely is that, or is this just sort of fundamentally part of who he is? And even if it is, I still think he has a valuable role to play in the squad. So, yeah, I think he's always going to be a player that divides opinion a bit because of that slightly erratic end product. But I like his spirit, I would say.
Fair enough. I enjoyed the breakdown of his rating. He got a 6.9 rating on SofaScore. You know how much I love made up player ratings and arbitrary numbers. But they do a rating breakdown. I've just sent it to you on WhatsApp there, where he gets, you know, increased marks for passing and dribbling, but shooting and defending have cost him some points in that one, which I think goes some way to explain his overall performance in this game.
Yeah.
2-1 at half-time to Arsenal, and I think it was on TNT Sports afterwards where Martin Keown suggested to Mikel Arteta that he might have had a few words to say to the players at the break, and Arteta sort of knowingly said yes.
Yes, but equally, the game should have been over by that point.
Absolutely. It should have been like 4-1 at that stage, at half-time, you know? So, and that's probably part of what Mikel Arteta had to say about that. I think, you know, this is a game that Arsenal could have had out of sight at half-time, you know, based on the chances we created in that first half and also the fact that we missed a penalty. So there's that, like, oh, you know, are we going to pay the price for that? But I think as well, the second half performance from Arsenal was far better than it was in the first half. You know, having warmed up and come to terms with the way that Portsmouth were playing, I think it was not all Arsenal, because I can remember just before we did score that third goal, Ben White had to make a very good block in our box. I think it was maybe after a Portsmouth corner, and Ben White got across and defended very well. But it was Madueke fouled in midfield. Myles Lewis-Skelly took a quick free kick, found Gabriel Jesus. This is an excellent pass from Jesus to the back post. And Gabriel Martinelli this time made no mistake.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Martinelli, he sort of went with his wrong foot this time because he missed the chance in the first half off his left. And I think he was like, I'm going to use my right on this one. Just sort of reached out, prodded it home. Good quick thinking from Myles. It was interesting. Merino and Gabriel were straight over to Myles afterwards. Lots of sort of pats on the back, pats on the head. Because he hadn't had the easiest first half either, I would say, Myles.
I think that's true, yeah.
And Gabriel Jesus, a great delivery. I mean, I suppose we shouldn't forget, this is a guy who played actually right wing for Man City for about half his time there. So I think you saw a bit of that there. It was just beautifully played across the box. And Martinelli, well, this time he couldn't miss.
No. he couldn't, and he didn't. There was a lovely Ben White moment, which made me laugh a lot when he got nutmegged and just pushed the guy over, which was hilarious. I really don't understand how he didn't get a yellow card for that, but I think the ref was just like, that's too funny. I can't give him a yellow card for that. It's just too funny. Mikel Arteta made changes then, and he brought on Martin Odegaard, Jurrien Timber, and Kai Havertz returning to action for the first time since the opening day of the season, on for Jesus, Nwaneri and Ben White. And that's a big moment, I think, in this season. It's a big moment for what lies ahead, rather, I should say, between now and May, having Havertz back and having Havertz look pretty sharp. It's fair to say in the 20-odd minutes that he played. He was obviously involved in the move which led to the fourth goal, held it up nicely in midfield, played a ball behind for Madueke. Madueke in the box probably took a bit too long to get his shot off. This is another one of those moments where it's like, oh, a great run, drive into the box, be a bit more decisive, but he sort of Madueke'd around a little bit. We got a corner, and then Madueke delivers again for Gabriel Martinelli to head home. And actually, I think this is a really, really well taken header. Credit to the delivery. Portsmouth did not learn their lesson at all when it came to defending their near post. But the way Martinelli heads this home is really, really excellent. You know, I think if sort of a more how would you say, like, as somebody who's considered more of a target man, a striker, a stereotype. Yeah, that it reminded me a little bit of a goal. I know it didn't go quite the same way, but I remember Olivier Giroud scoring a goal, maybe in a cup tie as well, where he sort of flicked it on from the front post all the way to the back post. But it's that kind of movement and that kind of header, you know, using the neck muscles to guide the ball home. And it's a great moment for Martinelli, his first ever senior hat-trick, his first Arsenal hat-trick. And a great response from Gabriel Martinelli, who, by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, was involved in an incident with Conor Bradley on Thursday. Were you aware of that?
Passed me by, actually. Totally passed me by.
I swear to God, every 10 seconds on TNT Sport, every time Martinelli got mentioned on TNT Sports, it was like, oh, well, you know, he's reacted to the Conor Bradley incident there, and, you know, and he has apologised, of course, but Martinelli, who was involved in that incident, it was just like, shut up.
I know. And also, I'm not entirely sure it works, really, because it's not his football ability was never what was under the microscope or in question. You know, it was about his character or his conduct, I should say.
Yes.
But I suppose, I mean, it does show you what a crazy and weird life it must be to be a Premier League footballer, that you can sort of have a huge array of experiences within a matter of a few days. And I was pleased for him to get the headlines for the right reason. I think that will have meant a great deal to him. And it's a really good header. I'm watching it now. He sort of does like a little 180-degree spin as he's heading it. He sort of ends up facing completely the opposite direction. So, yeah, he did well in that situation. And I was a bit surprised it was his first hat-trick, actually. I think I'd invented one in my mind. He'd scored early doors. But yeah, at full time, he was straight over to that match ball. So he'll definitely remember it.
It's a shame it's just such a horrible ball. Like,
I thought that, actually. I'd be a bit gutted about that.
With that horrible pinky, peachy FA Cup ball. I can't stand it, I swear.
It's not a nice ball.
No.
But yeah, Kai, I thought you were right to point out, looked sharp. He did a lot of Kai Havertz things, really.
I mean, I think the first thing he did was like receive a ball in midfield in a tight area, and it stuck to him.
The novelty, Andrew.
Well, certainly people have, I don't know, I've seen people talking about Mikel Arteta's comments about Kai Havertz when he came on, and what he said was, in the last few minutes, I was watching him move and his awareness, the way he needs to move, when he needs to move in relation to where he moves. It's just a joy to watch. And people have sort of interpreted that as relating to other players or another player that we have whose movement has been under the spotlight. What I don't want to do today is just have another Gyökeres conversation, so I'm going to leave it there. But I did notice that certainly when Havertz came on, there was no rustiness in the touch, which I think can be an issue when you come back after such a long time out. And let's not forget, it's August since he played. And he did play over the course of the summer. He returned at the end of last season to make some appearances, but it's nearly going on a year since he started a game. So you might expect a little bit of rustiness there, but I didn't see it. And I did see certainly Martin Odegaard in particular looking for a way to get Kai Havertz a goal in the last few minutes of this game where... listen, we know he's got that ability. We know he's got the craft. And certainly you could see that Havertz was trying to catch Odegaard's eye as much as Odegaard was trying to find him as well.
Yes, definitely. And I do think, again, not to make it about Victor, but there is a chemistry between Odegaard and Havertz on and off the pitch. There is a chemistry between Saka and Havertz. So I'm interested to see if, fingers crossed, Kai can stay fit and stay around the first team. I think sort of plugging back into those relationships could be really profitable for Arsenal. I must admit, in the first 15 minutes of the game, I was watching it out there and thought, I'm not sure this is a great game to bring Kai back into. Like, it was quite physical, quite intense, quite closely fought at that stage. But I think the degree of comfort that we showed in the second half, that our performance came up a level, we were firmly in control. That made it much more amenable, for him to come on. And yeah, great to see him. I mean, that was another big boost on the day. And pleased for Myles Salmon as well to get another run out right back. I thought he looked pretty tidy too. He
did, yeah. The youngest ever player to represent Arsenal in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Mikel Arteta talking about Marley Salmon's debut on TNT Sports afterwards. He obviously forgot he played him earlier in the season.
In the
Champions League, no less, yeah. Because, there was a question about, who we were going to use at the back, who we might use defensively. I think what you can see, he was good and tidy and used the ball well, but I think you can see there is a physical gap, right, at this point, which is completely understandable given he's 16 years of age. It's not that he doesn't have the height, but what he doesn't have is the sort of the physique quite yet, and that'll come obviously in time. But the idea that maybe that he might start a game like this, and I think you can sort of understand why that didn't happen. But given the fact we were 4-1 up, we were able to take Gabriel off, put Jurriën Timber into the centre of defence and play Salmon at right back for the last 20 minutes. Really nice afternoon for him.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, there were a lot of nice little subplots and stories on the day. And like I say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I do think you hit on something by saying that it's almost a relief to be playing in a different competition without that relentless pressure that we face in a title race in the Premier League. And this is a competition, I know opinions on the domestic cups vary, but when you look at the squad we have, when you look at the 11 we were able to field, despite the fact we made 10 changes, we ought to be going far in this competition. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see what the draw holds for us. Probably Man City away.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we could
in our luck.
We could do with a kind draw again, to be honest. We haven't had
a home draw would be great.
Yeah, home draw against a sort of lower league team would be really nice again, just to sort of have a not an easy game, but an opportunity for some of these players to play and help us make progress. Be a lovely reward for
Macclesfield, wouldn't it? A tie at the Emirates Stadium.
Yes.
I'll take my chances against Macclesfield.
Okay.
If the draw gods can hand us that.
Yeah, so that draw takes place a little bit later on this evening, I think, around 6:30 or so. Right. This evening, and look, I think it's a beneficial outing for a lot of those players. Some of them really haven't played a lot of late, but when you look at what we've still got to come this month and the amount of games we've got left to play, and some of the trips we have to take as well, before we play at home again, it's useful, for guys like Madueke, for Eze, for Lewis-Skelly, who did struggle, I think, in that first half, but kind of grew into the game a little bit. Martinelli maybe playing himself into the team for Wednesday night. Who knows? On the back of a hat-trick, the manager might feel he should keep him in the team. So, I don't think anyone failed to do themselves justice or take some kind of benefit from this game.
Absolutely. I think, we're playing in the next few weeks, we're playing in all 4 competitions, right? And we're going to need those players who I consider sort of the second layer of the squad, the kind of 12th men. I would say Martinelli, Merino, Madueke, players like that are going to get game time, minutes. I suppose Eze as well, actually, you'd have to say, is part of that group. And I thought a lot of them performed in promising fashion here. So Gabriel Martinelli seems to be spearheading our attempts to win everything but the Premier League, basically.
Yeah, he's likes a cup goal, doesn't he? So
he does.
Yeah, well, why not? And look, it wasn't a great weekend for some of the other teams in the Premier League. In the FA Cup, Manchester United went out yesterday. Did you see Alex Ferguson's face? Did you see
No, I
it?
saw Danny Welbeck's face, and he looks plenty happy about the goal he scored.
Hang on, I'm gonna send you a screenshot that I just had to take. I sent it to my brother last night just because we had to have a laugh.
I really enjoy this sort of Indian summer of Danny Welbeck, I must say. It's just a player I always really, really liked and really rated. And one of the things I like most about him is his insistence on scoring against Manchester United, and also his insistence on celebrating those goals fully. Yes.
I mean, I will sort of caveat that with, like, he could do it against us and it would be really annoying, but he does seem to like a goal against Manchester United and in the FA Cup as well. If you remember, we did.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think I've sent that to you there.
So you've
now.
sent me Alex Ferguson's face. Hang on, let's have a look. The reports. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. He doesn't look happy at what he's seeing there.
He certainly doesn't, does he? Darren Fletcher, you've let the great man down.
I know, right? Michael Carrick, currently the favourite, I believe, to step into that role. So I mean, they're fun to watch. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, Liverpool played tonight, don't they? Man City scored 10.
Twats.
Yeah.
Just
at least it wasn't 10-0. I would have been gutted for Elliot if they'd actually got the 10-0.
Scoring 10, though.
Exeter got themselves 1 in stoppage time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, thoroughly enjoyable. And now on to
Wednesday, another cup game.
Yes.
We have some questions.
We may have questions about that.
We certainly do. All right. Let's take a little break here then. We'll come back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you send to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Ooh, sorry.
Wow.
What, that was me fiddling with something I shouldn't have. Listen. Yeah, I'm playing with things. Anyway, questions, Blue Sky, Discord, blah, blah, blah. I think that's it. Do you want to go first? Will I go first?
You go first.
Okay.
Andrew.
Given that we were just referencing Wednesday, Shatner's bassoon on the Discord asks, is it totally ridiculous to see Wednesday as our biggest game of the season? We and Arteta really need a trophy, and this is our first shot at it. Add in the abysmal semi-final record, the opponent and the likely opponent in the final, and it all starts to feel a bit bigger than a normal Rumbelows Cup game. Is this just me?
I think it might not be just you. I mean, I think Mikel Arteta would agree. And the reason I say that is he would just always say the next game is the biggest one. I don't think it's quite as big as some of the league games. Even Mikel Arteta, I think, said it the other day. He said something about we want to win a trophy and we want to win the big ones, or something like that. I do think there remains a sort of distinction between the Premier League, the Champions League, and the other competitions.
Sure.
And I think there's kind of more equity placed in those big two. But it is a big game. I think it's probably a bigger game for Chelsea because they've got a brand new manager. This is one of their routes to silverware this season. They don't, like us, I think, have a realistic chance of sort of landing the big ones. So I think it's a big game. Biggest? Probably not.
No, I wouldn't say it's the biggest game of the season, but do you think the fact that it is a bigger game for Chelsea, or might be perceived as a bigger game for Chelsea, will to some extent inform the way Mikel Arteta approaches this game, above and beyond the fact that it is a semi-final, away from home, London derby, a cup competition? And I know people's mileage varies on this cup in particular, a bit more than the FA Cup, But I also do think that this is a group of players who have come very close to winning something and haven't won anything yet, and that there could easily be a benefit in just sort of getting that monkey off their shoulders, if you like, and getting over the line and lifting a trophy and feeling like, okay, I know you can caveat it all you want. It's only the EFL Cup, etc. But like, as I often say, if we get to the final of this competition, Arteta will pick his strongest team and everybody will be watching that game, desperate for Arsenal to win it and to lift a trophy, regardless of where you prioritize this particular competition. Once you get to this stage of a tournament, you're sort of in it to win it, I think he will be inclined to go pretty much as strong as he can in this game.
I think he will too. And actually, I think that the greatest indicator of that is the amount of changes he made at Portsmouth, right? And I think we'll look at it as an opportunity to bring a lot of those players back in. The final is in mid-March, March 15th. We're already playing the two semi-finals, so it's not like winning them adds massively to our fixture congestion. It's one more game to win the whole thing. I think there could be a big benefit to getting that monkey off our shoulders, as you say. It started on our back and it is now climbed up to our shoulders.
Yes.
And it's hitting us over the head repeatedly. I think going into the second half of March, April and May, having ended the wait for a trophy could be a really beneficial thing. So I think Arteta will go strong, stronger than some would like, stronger than some will anticipate. I think it'll be pretty much as strong as he can pick.
What about this follow-up question from Subordinate Clause, who says, has Martinelli earned a start for the League Cup semi-final, or should Trossard come back in? What would being dropped do for Martinelli's confidence, also considering he's our top scorer this season as well? You'll remember Mikel Arteta handed a start to Mikel Merino earlier this season after a hat-trick for Spain because he said, he was in such a good moment. He had this confidence and was full of belief, etc., which, you understand, he scored a hat-trick. Same apply here?
It's a tough one, because obviously Trossard's had a great season and been in really good form. I think Martinelli as well, two of his three goals came off dead balls, set pieces. So it's not as if it's necessarily like an outstanding case he made in open play. I mean, I think he was good, don't get me wrong. And I think his movement and his speed is always going to be difficult for a defence like Portsmouth to live with. I I really don't know. I think it's a bit of a toss-up. If he's left out, I would say that dropped is not really the word. I think it's what this performance has done has shown the value Martinelli brings, and Mikel Arteta is in a very privileged position to be able to choose between him and Leandro Trossard. And I guess it will be a kind of a horses for courses choice, and also one based on combinations. I do think Martinelli plays better when Gabriel Jesus is our number 9. They just have a really good rapport, and there's something about the positions Jesus takes up, or rather the ones he vacates, that I think really benefits Martinelli.
Who do you think he's going to start up front in this game?
I think he'll play Gyökeres. What do you think?
Don't know.
Yeah, he's got choices now.
He does have choices. I mean, we talked, didn't we, last week about like what he might do up front for this game, and we'd sort of advocated for Gabriel Jesus to start because, he needs the minutes, and Gyökeres hasn't exactly been pulling up trees. I thought Jesus was okay yesterday. It was a great pass for the Martinelli goal. I don't know.
I mean, I've seen very mixed stuff on his performance. I personally quite enjoyed it. I thought there were a few really, really nice touches in there. It was odd, actually, watching an Arsenal centre-forward at times be like in the centre circle, knocking the ball about with the midfield and dropping right in. It's such a contrast to the way Gyökeres plays.
Some might say, that's maybe a bit too deep. And
exactly.
that you do want your central defender to be, or centre forward rather, to be higher up the pitch in moments where you can get the ball into the box and he can contribute there. Like, I get it.
They're two extremes, I think,
almost,
really, Jesus and Gyökeres.
Is Havertz the one in the middle then? Is Havertz the one who sort of operates in that sort of middle ground of being able to crash the box, but also when he does drop, he doesn't quite drop that deep into midfield?
I think so. I hope so. But is Havertz ready to start at Stamford Bridge? I'm going to say I don't think he will be.
I don't think so either. I think the fact that we have Gyökeres and the fact that we have Jesus allows Mikel Arteta to ease Kai Havertz back into action without overburdening him. I think that's the last thing you want to do for a player who's been in and out for almost a year. I think you have to respect the time it will take to get back to proper match fitness. And I think you're looking at giving him 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, et cetera, as he builds up, that kind of match sharpness and match fitness. So it would be too soon, I think, for me to expect Havertz to start on Wednesday.
Just on Gyökeres, was any part of you surprised that he didn't get sort of 10, 15 minutes against a tired Portsmouth defence, where there was space, there were opportunities, potential chances in that last period of the game? Like, did you think that Arteta might have been tempted to give him some minutes?
No. I did think, and I think I said this on the preview podcast or in the preview on the blog, that if Jesus starts this game, the most useful thing for Arsenal would be to give those 20 minutes late in the game to Havertz rather than Gyökeres. Because Gyökeres has played a lot and Havertz needs to be reintegrated and we need to get him back. And I think the longer term benefit of those 20 minutes, if Gyökeres had come on and scored a couple of goals, people would say, well, it's just a couple of goals against Portsmouth, bottom of the championship. They finished the game with 10 men, still doesn't mean anything for Gyökeres. Even if I think, you could say he'll probably benefit from that in terms of confidence, but I don't think in the bigger picture it would be that significant. Whereas I think getting Havertz back, that might also have an impact on Gyökeres. If it lights a fire under Victor Gyökeres when he does play again and sort of redoubles his efforts to score some goals, then all well and good. But I did think from a strategic point of view, if I was Mikel Arteta and I was thinking about how I could get the most out of my players and the most out of my squad, the Jesus 70 minutes, Havertz 20 minutes thing would have been first in my mind. And, if Gyökeres doesn't come on, well, that's just the way it goes.
Mm-hmm. I think to come all the way back to Martinelli, as we're talking, I think I've sort of landed on the idea that I think it does kind of depend on the 9. I think it does kind of depend on the striker. My gut tells me that Martinelli and Gyökeres is not an ideal combination because they kind of want to run into the same spaces in some respects. Whereas whereas Trossard, if you're playing him off Gyökeres, I think he is happier sort of being on the ball a bit deeper, maybe being more of the creator. I think Martinelli's at his best when he's almost playing that left wing Aubameyang style with a centre forward dropping in like a Lacazette used to for Oba, and him just running in behind. So I think if Jesus starts, Martinelli makes a ton of sense. If it's Gyökeres, I'd go with Trossard.
All right.
What about this from Jensen on Blue Sky? Morning, fellas. What are your thoughts on Merino being captain over Gabriel? I found it slightly weird given his tenure, leadership and importance to the team. And then he adds a non-issue or something more underlying, given we may be looking at Guehi for the summer.
Oh, I don't really see the connection to Marc Guehi at all. I don't really think it's a big deal. I think Gabriel is part of the leadership group, isn't he? Mikel Merino, I think, you can see why Mikel Arteta loves Mikel Merino. And it's not just, the connection of the club or the first name or the nationality. I think if you were to sort of lay out the qualities of both of those men as players, really selfless, really professional, really dedicated, solid pros, are they the best players ever? No. But do they ensure that in every game they're properly prepared, they're committed, all of the qualities that you want from a squad player are evident in Mikel Merino, and they were there in Mikel Arteta as well during his time at Arsenal. I think there was you can see Arteta's entire career has been built on absolute dedication, professionalism and hard work, right? Mm-hmm. And he's take nothing away from him as a player. He was a very skillful player. When he played for Everton, he was somebody that I really wanted Arsenal to sign, actually. I remember writing about it and saying we should really sign this guy because, when he was playing further forward for Everton, there was a lot about his game that I liked. But I think a lot of those qualities are there in Mikel Merino as well. Leadership, lead by example. I don't see it as a slight on Gabriel at all. Do you? I just think it's Arteta's preference, and ultimately, I think we get a bit too hung up sometimes on the armband issue and who's wearing it and what it means for who's not wearing it. Merino was probably, aside from Martinelli scoring the goals, as we touched on in the first half, I think he was our best player on the day, and he was kind of the leader that we needed in that first half. And if that's a consequence of him having the armband or not, don't think it really matters. I couldn't argue with the way that he led the team yesterday. No.
And I have to admit, I was a little surprised to see Merino with the armband over Gabriel, just because of their status in the squad. But perhaps I shouldn't be, because Merino is thought of so highly by the coaching staff, even if he doesn't play every game. I spoke about the versatility he's displayed this season, the tactical intelligence. I think his character and his personality generally is something that a lot of people in the club really, really admire. I think it's a testament to him, really. And actually, like in this season where, as focused as we are on the league, it is about more than the league by this point. We're in one semi-final, we're into the fourth round of the FA Cup, we're going really well in the Champions League. I do feel that second layer of players are going to be really important. When we reflect on the Invincibles, for example, we talk about the 11, and everyone can name that 11. But we also talk about Sylvain Wiltord, Kanu, Edu,
Pascal Sigan,
exactly. Other players who made massive contributions in that season, despite not necessarily being obvious starters. Ray Parlour would be another one. Martin Keown. Yeah, and I think Merino has the quality and the character to sort of be considered in that fashion, should we prove to be successful this season, even though he's not necessarily first pick, an automatic pick. I envisage him having a really big role to play.
I agree. And your point about, those fringe players, those players who are considered not first 11 players, they're really valuable. They're really important in a title-winning season, Pascal Sigan, 18 appearances in the league-winning season the last time we won the league, Gail Clichy with 12, Wiltord with 12. So those players are quite valuable. And before we move on to the next question, which is kind of a follow-up question on the one we had, there's a bit of breaking news. Per Mertesacker, the club's academy manager, is confirming he'll leave Arsenal at the end of the season after 8 years in the job. Bit of a surprise, I suppose. There've been not too many public rumblings about that. Mertesacker says, I remain focused on finishing the season strongly, continuing to nurture and develop our young talent and support a seamless transition until my very last day with the club. So he's been in charge of what he called, I think, the strong young gunners. Was that the catchphrase or the turn of phrase that was used?
Yeah.
And obviously his connection with Arsenal has been quite significant at this stage.
It has. It's been a long time here, and I guess his legacy will be in the players who were produced by the academy during that time. I think the likes of Ethan Ranieri and Myles Lewis-Skelly, Max Dowman will always be associated with Per Mertesacker's tenure. So, but change is also an opportunity, and I think there is a feeling that the Arsenal academy could be doing a bit more in terms of producing players, perhaps not necessarily for Arsenal, but producing players who are profitable to Arsenal.
Let's just sort of unpack that a little bit. To what extent is that the responsibility of someone like Mertesacker? Obviously, he heads up the academy, so he is the main man there, right? But is this is it to do with the structure? Is it to do with the coaching? Is it to do with the coaches? Is it to do with, let's say, the best players, for example, from the academy in recent years, the likes of Myles Lewis-Skelly, Ethan Ranieri, Max Dowman now, have maybe not had as much football at that level than people might have imagined, and therefore that has an impact on how that level is perceived. Let's say last season Arsenal don't have the injury issues that require us to use Ranieri and Lewis-Skelly, and they play a bit more at underage level, and there's a bit more success at underage level. How do you sort of unpack that whole thing?
I think it's really nuanced, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it. I think a lot of it's about recruitment, to be honest with you, academy recruitment. And they're working within difficult limitations now, post-Brexit as well, in terms of being able to bring in European talent.
Can't even bring in an Irish lad until he's 18.
Exactly. Until he's 18. Happy 17th birthday to Victor Osimhen, who was 17 last week. He's 1 year to go until he's an Arsenal player. But I think... I don't know. I actually think it's a sort of interesting philosophical discussion almost about what an academy is for. Because in one respect, I think during Per's time, the academy has been incredibly successful in that it has produced 3 first-team level talents, which is a great return and could save Arsenal, without exaggeration, over £100 million. Maybe even more in terms of the market value of those players. At the same time, the other primary purpose of an academy really, in an age of financial regulation, has to be to make money for a club. And I think Arsenal have done less well in that regard.
Is that a how would I put this? A matter of perception in terms of, like, if you know you're going to get a young player from Arsenal, you know you're going to get a good young player, right, across the board. And obviously the dozens and hundreds of young players who play academy football for Arsenal and every other academy, most of them never make it to the Premier League. And they may have a career in the game and they may end up down the leagues a little bit. Because of the way the level goes as you get older and you mature, you've got to be really special to play in the Premier League. But is it about, let's say, if a club decides we want to take a young player from Arsenal, or that club knows that this is going to be a high-level player, at least in terms of the coaching and education they've got, and the benefit to Arsenal might not necessarily be in the initial move or transfer, but potential sell-on fees or clauses and things like that.
Yeah, perhaps so. Perhaps so. I think a lot of it is reputational, and I think it's about there being precedent. Like, I think when the club goes to Man City now and they're buying an academy player from Man City who's barely had a kick at first team level, I think it's kind of ingrained and established that you're going to have to pay proper money for those players. Like, you know, there are clubs paying out 15 million quid or whatever for guys that you and I, frankly, have never heard of. And I don't think, and it's the same with Chelsea to an extent, and I don't think Arsenal have quite established that. Now, granted, that's because a lot of the, you know, there's 3 major academy talents we've listed that they don't want to sell and wouldn't be interested in selling. So maybe that offsets it a bit, or that skews it a bit. But I think that is kind of the dichotomy. That is the sort of dilemma of an academy in this day and age. And I think it's a relatively new phenomenon, because I think the financial rules sort of force you to look at it as something that's there to generate money. That's a necessity when you're having to work within, you know, spending parameters constrained by revenue. So yeah, listen, I think Per's a terrific guy, and I think he's installed some great principles in the academy and produced some great players. I would expect Arsenal's sort of next phase for the academy to be maybe more, you know, certainly to have a focus on how can we make this something that financially benefits the club. That would be my guess.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. And I guess we say thank you to Per Mertesacker, who, you know, basically went straight from playing to this role as head of the Arsenal Academy and has been working there for 8 years. So probably might need a little bit of a break or some time off himself.
Definitely. And I think he would like to be, you know, he's spoken before about having designs on potentially being a technical director or a sporting director somewhere. It wouldn't surprise me if
back to Germany,
once he's had that respite, yeah, he pops up in that sort of role somewhere.
Yeah, and I think you're right as well to highlight what I always liked about the way Per Mertesacker ran the academy was the fact that he had this focus on the human element, you know, educating players, not just as footballers, but as young men, to help them either make a career in football at whatever level or cope with not making a career in football. When your hopes and dreams and expectations are so high as a young man, there was always that focus on, listen, you're going to come out of this Arsenal Academy, hopefully a better footballer, but definitely a better person or a more rounded person. And I think that's not always the case, or certainly hasn't always been the case at academy level, where young players maybe haven't been treated with that kind of respect. And I do think that's a very important part of Mertesacker's remit. So,
yeah. And listen, he's a great, if you ever have any concept of Per, he's a great person. And I think he brought a wonderful like human dimension to the academy in his first role after playing as well, where he was doing a lot of learning on the job. And I think, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because he and Mikel were kind of a real pair as players. They were sort of the twin leaders of the squad, and they've kind of both been at Arsenal through this period too. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see what direction Arsenal go from here, and also interested to see what's next for Per.
All right, I did want to follow up on a question. You mentioned Marc Guehi, and sickburps.bsky.social asks, what did you make of David Ornstein's reporting this week that we have an interest in Marc Guehi as a summer option? I found the timing of this a bit strange, and the fact that the info got out at all. Could we be trying to muddy the waters in the hope that he won't go to City this month? And there was also a question on the Discord, Andy Gunner 16. What do you both make of the Marc Guehi rumours? Would you be on board with us bringing him in this summer? And if so, what do you think that means for the current defensive roster?
Well, he's a long-term target in that, I remember having conversations about Marc Guehi last summer, potentially the summer before. He's always been a player Arsenal like. In terms of him coming in imminently, I mean, I suppose, either now or more likely this summer, I'm a little bit more cautious on that, only because I'm not quite sure how it makes sense for him, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Given Saliba and Gabriel, I know there was a question earlier about Gabriel not being given the armband. I don't foresee Arsenal wanting to disrupt that partnership, and they've both relatively recently signed to new long-term contracts. So, I'm not particularly worried about one of them going at this point in time. Touch wood. So, I don't really see it from his point of view. I don't think he would be first choice at Arsenal. I think he probably would be first choice at Man City. Certainly in what remains of this season, where they've got a lot of injuries, he'd play an awful lot of football. My gut feeling is he probably goes to Man City before the month is out, and that this may all be part of quite a public process of sort of extricating the right fee from City. But I do like him. I think he's really good. But yeah, I just don't quite see it making sense for him. That's my read on it.
I don't think he's better than William Saliba or Gabriel.
No.
And that means, and listen, we've seen this season we've been without both of them, so you could make the argument there's probably plenty of football to go around, but I don't think he's better than both of them. And I think, he's at a point in his career where he wants to go somewhere and be an undisputed first choice. And Manchester City, given the defensive issues that they have right now, that does make sense, and that does seem to be the right kind of option as well. Maybe Liverpool in the summer, if he hangs on, gets that free transfer to Liverpool, where I think, 35-year-old Virgil van Dijk can't go on forever. I think he'd certainly get into the team ahead of Konate, the way he's been playing this season. So I think he's got better chances of regular first-team football elsewhere than he does at Arsenal. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if anything happened.
But it goes without saying. Well, if David's reporting it, I don't think he would report it unless there was...
Oh, sure, yeah.
something to it, and B, if you can sign a player of Marc Guehi's calibre for free, it's a hell of a coup. So, yeah, be interesting, one to watch. But I just have a feeling he'll end up at City this month. But let's see. We had some questions about Myles and about left back. I thought this one was interesting. From MB273 on Blue Sky. And they say, is it me or do we invert our left back much less now? In Myles Lewis-Skelly's top performances, thinking the Madrid games, for example, he was essentially bossing the middle. Is it any surprise he looks off it when he's barely spending any time in midfield and playing more as a conventional left back?
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. I think he was inverting quite a lot yesterday. I think he did spend time in the middle. And maybe the issue that he has at left back is the space that left backs have to deal with at Arsenal. I think what we've seen from Myles this season is a young player. We talked about second season syndrome, didn't we, last week a little bit? Maybe there's some of that, where maybe there's an element of doubt in his mind. Whereas I think what would you say was like the most obvious thing about Myles last season was this sort of easy confidence with which he came into the team, right? This is a kid who got booked before he even set foot on a pitch for Arsenal during that Man City game, you remember? This was, there was a sort of self-confidence that was there, which when he did get the chance, translated into the sort of performances that we saw from him. He looked a confident player, right? And maybe part of that is because you are young and you don't have the fear and you don't have much to consider. You're just like, hey, look at this. I'm in the team. I'm playing. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do things. He didn't get everything right. There were moments last season where I think he did get exposed a little bit, but he was still willing to sort of pick himself up, dust himself down and, charge upfield, charge through the Real Madrid midfield and defense with the ball, right? Mm-hmm. That was cloud nine kind of stuff for him, if that's the right way of putting it. And I think what we've seen this season from Myles is maybe a bit of a reality check. And maybe that confidence is not there. Maybe that self-belief is not there for understandable reasons, because he hasn't played a lot. And when he does go on the pitch now, he is thinking more about what he can't do rather than what he can do. You know, and form and fluency and rhythm and all of those things are applicable to every footballer. And I don't know why they wouldn't be applicable to a young man like Myles. And I hope, you know, over the coming weeks, if he has to play a bit, that he discovers or rediscovers some of that form and some of that confidence, because he was great last season. He really was. He was such an encouraging part of what was overall a pretty frustrating and hard to take season for Arsenal. So, listen, you're only as good as your last game, as the cliche goes, right? But I do think as well, people do need to just be a little more understanding of why this season he hasn't quite hit the heights that he hit. And you referenced it in part one, where that quick free kick, that moment where he was on his toes and he played that quick free kick to Gabriel Jesus, it resulted in a goal. And you said Gabriel and Mikel Merino were over there patting him on the head, giving him the encouragement that they obviously know he needs at this moment in time. And I think he can do better. He can defend better. He needs to defend better. But I don't think the role of left back, based on the way he played it last season and what he's being asked to do this season, has changed in any significant way.
Interesting. I think it may have changed a little bit, and that is pure... I mean, it's partly because I've been watching Pierre Nkapie play it for the last few weeks, and obviously it changes when he plays it, because he's not that player. He's not Myles Lewis-Skelly. He's not Alexander Zinchenko. I was chatting with Sam Dean yesterday when we were watching the game, and in the first half, I think in the first half, Myles was more conventionally at left back than he was in the second. I think there was a little shift there. And Sam was saying, and he'll have to forgive me for me sort of cribbing this from him, but he was saying he wonders if Declan Rice dropping in a little bit deeper in midfield at times into that almost double pivot with Zubimendi has kind of meant Arsenal playing with a left back that plays higher and wider at times. And certainly when Ricardo Calafiori plays, I think that is the case. So I don't know. I think there might be something happening in that evolution of that left back spot, which may not necessarily fit Myles perfectly. I think he's still doing it at times when he plays. And I think generally the issue with him is more about performance level than tactics. But yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out, because it's not something I'd necessarily sort of seen before. But we were kind of observing it yesterday, and it could be one to watch. But I think with Myles, the issue, like you say, is more confidence. And actually, in terms of like why he's not at that level, I sort of feel like the anomaly, the sort of strange part of it, is what he was doing last season. Like that's the sort of crazy part in terms of like how did he produce that level of form and consistency, having been so new in the team. I do wonder as well, like, are we seeing just that kind of almost stereotypical second season thing where opponents are a bit more wise to him now? You know, they understand
they know
where he's strong and where he's weak.
Yeah. I just had a quick look at the heat map from yesterday, and there is obviously the left-hand side, the classic left-back position is the heatiest bit of the heat map. But you can see that he's popping up in midfield, popping up in the opposition box, and also popping up on the right-hand side of midfield as well at times. So I think he isn't playing the role any differently from the way he played it last season. He's just not playing as well as he played last season. What about this one from Peter Hust, who says, "Good morning, gents. What is your take on Arsenal appointing Thomas Grunemark as a throw-in coach?"
Well, it's interesting, you know. I remember speaking to Andreas Jorgensen, who was Nico Yova's predecessor as set-piece coach at Arsenal. And I remember asking him about throw-ins. And he said to me, throw-ins are not part of a set-piece coach's remit at Arsenal. He said they are led by the general coaching staff. They're considered part of open play, effectively. I remember thinking, I wonder how long that will hold. Because throw-ins are so unique and so specific. And I often think so difficult. I mean, it's actually quite difficult to retain possession at a throw-in.
Did you, just bring it back to Myles. In the first half yesterday, one of the things that struck me was how at 6s and 7s he looked when we had a throw-in, which is a bit unusual, But I think there is now more focus from the opposition on making sure that you don't allow the opposition to get an easy throw.
Yeah, so on Gunnerblog, I think appointed is an exaggeration. I think he, from what I understand, has come in and done a bit of a few days workshopping kind of thing.
Sure.
And I think that process will be ongoing. He'll sort of feed back to Arsenal and they'll implement it and learn from it. But it was more a sort of kind of guest seminar than him being a new member of the coaching staff.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
But I think it's really interesting. And Gunnerblog is the leading expert on throw-ins. He's worked with a lot of different clubs and players, and is sort of the guru around particularly long throw-ins at this point in time. One thing I think would be interesting to keep an eye on is part of his key principles is taking throw-ins quickly. So
good luck with that, buddy.
But that's something we can keep. That's something he can definitely help us with.
I think that is true for sure. Yeah.
So I think he said something like throw-ins either need to be long or quick or something like that. So I think I do remember Arsenal had that little spell, might have been last season, where they had quite a lot of success with quick throw-ins down the line. Do you remember
Yes.
There was a period where they would sort of throw to the byline almost and run in behind against it. And that seems to have gone now. There's such an emphasis on the long throw, but I'm not really a believer in our long throw. I've got to say, I know Arsenal will have all the data and all the access, and they've got Gunnerblog's expertise now to rely upon. I just kind of feel like Declan Rice's delivery is so good with his feet. Couldn't we just throw to his feet? You know what I mean? Rather than have him just chuck it in the box.
I'm with you. I'm like a real long throw skeptic. If you don't have a player like, let's say, Michael Coyote or even Antoine Semenyo who can really throw it long and cause danger, you're just making it easier for the opposition defence, even if you say, oh, well, maybe we're pinning them back in their box and we're going to win the second ball. I just think, unless you can do it properly, don't do it, would be my thinking on it. And yesterday we saw, a couple where the ball was thrown back to a centre half to volley it up the pitch. That's how difficult it was to find throw-in recipients yesterday. And that was something that I noticed. So there you go. Yeah. By the way, I think Phil Costa has an interview with Thomas Gunnerblog on his podcast. It's the Football Vision podcast. If you want to seek that out, Phil has a very interesting chat with him about the whole kit and caboodle of throw-ins. So if you want something else to listen to this afternoon after you finish this, go check out that episode on the Football Vision podcast. So,
I look forward to listening to that, actually. Can't remember what we're talking about now.
I don't know. I think that's kind of everything, really.
Hickory Victory Yock said, "Good morning, gents. The next time we get a penalty when Saka and Gyökeres aren't on the pitch, should we just ask to take a corner instead?"
I like that one.
No, I think that's kind of it, really. And listen, people have got to get listening to this and get focused on Chelsea game.
Chelsea game coming up, exactly. There's a press conference tomorrow, I think, for Mikel Arteta, and we'll have a preview podcast because it is a big game. It is a cup semi-final. It's against big opposition. So we'll do a little bit of a preview podcast for you over on Patreon, which you can join up to at patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, as always, for being with us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for listening and downloading and sharing and subscribing and all of that good stuff. For now, take it easy, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.